Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Please remember to like the video and to make sure that you are still subscribed. Here's one for all you conspiracy theorists. The globalist green conspiracy theorists. How the fossil fuel industry is attempting to buy the global youth climate movement. There seems to be a lot of discussion around this before I get into what I'm going to read. I don't doubt, because, the Paris Agreement was fossil fuel interests and corporate interests were taken into account in the Paris Agreement. And also we're seeing, obviously COP25 and all the other conferences have representatives of nations and other interests that are watering down the final agreement. So, of course, greenwashing is happening. That isn't to say that I still believe that all the things that Greta Thunberg is saying, and it looks like her actions and the actions of the school strikers are without compromise. She's her vocalization of her disappointment with the actual things being done leads me to believe that she is not in anybody's pocket. And I believe the same about Extinction Rebellion. I mean, I think they all understand that things are really, really bad. We can discuss the ins and outs of, transitioning to a green economy or, whether that's even doable. But I actually just saw a recent interview with Gail Bradbrook. And I think I discussed this before too. She was being interviewed by Jimmy Dore, and he kept talking about transitioning to a green economy, and she was like, yeah, anyways, there are other things that are more important than even that. Anyways, let's get into this because I just rambled for 2.5 minutes. How the fossil fuel industry is attempting to buy the global youth climate movement. This is from December 13th by Aline Brown. The same day that 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg gave a stirring speech at the United Nations Climate Action Summit in September, in which she criticized delegates for stealing my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. The architects of the climate crisis welcomed select youth participants from the summit to dine. CEOs from fossil fuel corporations, including BP, Royal Dutch Shell, and Norway's Equinor, were attending the annual gathering of the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative in New York, which includes industry leaders who claim to be committed to taking practical action on climate change. On the agenda for lunch was to explore options for long-term engagement with young people the industry could trust. Student Energy, a nonprofit based in Alberta near Canada's tar sands region, helped organize the event, which included time for students to grill the CEOs about their inaction on climate change. Tension in the room was high. Student Energy's executive director, 30-year-old Meredith Adler, told The Intercept. The whole discussion started off with one of our participants talking about why youth don't trust oil and gas companies, she said. But by the end of the meeting, Adler tweeted that she was very impressed with OGCI. I don't feel that they had all the answers or strong enough answers, but they are really listening, she wrote. The students' questions may have been tough, but the event was a great PR for the fossil fuel industry. Gone are the days when CEOs openly questioned the existence of climate change. Today, industry leaders are feigning a sense of climate urgency while pushing forward proposals for climate action that will allow companies to keep harvesting carbon-emitting products well into the future. Subjecting themselves to a cohort of skeptical students was an opportunity for oil and gas executives to boost their credibility in an era when many young activists will only engage with them with picket signs. And this is also true, with leaders on the left, not so much on the right. They don't give a shit, but with people who are like, yeah, we're really concerned about climate change. And you see the ads running every day, right? If you watch TV, I don't really watch TV, but if I've watched TV and I see ads from energy companies talking about bringing us in Exxon, bringing us into a green future, some shit like that. Like there's so many of those stupid ads. They're like, you're not fucking green. You're not. There's no green future, idiot. Like, but it's just it's frustrating anyway. So sorry, cursing. Young activists say they're seeing more of this youth washing as the global youth climate movement gains momentum, including at the UN annual climate conference known as COP25, which is wrapping up in Madrid this week. With youth becoming synonymous with climate action, corporations and politicians are increasingly using young people to portray themselves as climate serious. First I was climate curious, and then I was climate serious. The use of youth in campaigning is becoming more and more overt, said 24-year-old Elid Rob, a member of the UK Youth Climate Coalition, who has been involved in pushing the UN to adopt a conflict of interest policy that would prevent fossil fuel industry representatives from exercising influence at COP. There's a real dangerous tokenism of youth for the benefit of public image. The OGCI gathering was a particularly egregious example of youth washing. OGCI has provided funding to Student Energy, and OGCI Ventures Director Rhea Hamilton is on the group's board of directors. Wow. Among the partners listed in Student Energy's 2018 annual report are Royal Dutch Shell and Suncor, one of Canada's biggest tar sands producers. Wow. Fossil fuel companies consistently fund the organization's annual conference. Well, how nice. Although Student Energy's leaders often echo the talking points of activists like Thunberg, the group's membership, a network it claims includes 40,000 young people, is largely made up of people who want to work in the energy industry. Student Energy is among the youth groups granted observer status. At COP25, meaning that its members can gain access to negotiation spaces, speak with negotiating parties, and participate in events, as opposed to others who are outside protesting. Its presence at the UN's international climate talks is only expected to grow. However, I actually saw, I think it was a few months ago that I saw a video from Roger Hallam, excuse me. How did I mess up his name? Roger Hallam. Saying that he was invited to speak at COP25 when it was still in Chile. And he thought, he seemed to think that was fairly humorous, but he was thinking about going. Obviously, he's not there, I don't think. I haven't seen any news about Roger Hallam speaking at COP25. Its presence at the UN's international climate talks is only expected to grow. Student Energy's 2018 report noted that the group had seen a 73% increase in active chapters. Next year, the oil and gas major BP has pledged to send 50 Student Energy delegates to COP26. The funding would double the size of the group's usual delegation, according to a BP press release. In a conference space that serves as a battleground of ideas about how to address the climate crisis, BP apparently sees Student Energy's presence as beneficial to the corporation. Wow. That's all you need to know. I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but I'm going to link it, of course. Yeah, so they're just listing all the ways in which people are using, and here's a picture with Trudeau and Greta, and then there's a famous picture of, or a GIF of Obama and Greta, fist bumping. But all of this is to make them look like they care, while making sure that the world is provided with the energy that it needs in the future. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Well, let's cover this one first, and we'll go to the other one. Zimbabwe. This is from a few weeks ago, but Zimbabwe struggling to feed itself as natural disasters. I hate these things go away. Natural disasters wreak havoc. The one-time breadbasket of Africa faces a severe crisis in wake of cyclone and drought. Rural communities in eastern Zimbabwe, hit by the full force of 2 natural disasters since the beginning of 2019, are struggling to survive. Cyclone Idai, combined with the worst drought in living memory, have left the people of Manicaland province reliant on monthly food baskets from the United Nations and Zimbabwe government. Because people's traditional food sources have been compromised, the little money they manage to earn is spent on food. The knock-on effect of this, Morange explains, is that people cannot afford medicine or to pay school fees for their children. People are not dying directly from hunger, but there is a big increase in health problems for the young, old, and chronically ill because our diet is poor. Most of us only eat 1 meal a day of sadza, a type of porridge made from maize. In response to the growing humanitarian disaster in Zimbabwe, the WFP launched an appeal in August for $331 million to feed 2.5 million of the estimated 7.7 million people, nearly half the population, who require food aid until the end of 2020. All right, I'm going to link that below. And there's also, this is also another article about drought in southern Africa, and I believe this is the picture of Victoria Falls, or another picture of Victoria Falls, of the falls being, the river feeding the falls being quite low. Let's see. Every Monday, let me see. Every Monday at 8 p.m. since November, Bulawayo residents have gathered next to their toilets to prepare for a ritual that has come to be known as the Big Flush, another sign of water emergency across southern Africa. For the 700,000 residents of Zimbabwe's second largest city, flushing outside government-mandated times puts them at the risk of being fined. I didn't read the headline of this. A fine for a flush. So I guess you get fined for flushing at the wrong time. Drought leaves southern Africa high and dry. Maybe I read that. Maybe I'm losing my mind. I'm not sure. Send help. Economies in the region are reeling from a second historic drought in 3 years, leaving 45 million people facing water and food crisis, according to the United Nations. That marks a sharp rise in recent years, the UN and other aid agencies said. In Zambia, a drought that has ravaged, the word is ravaged, not ravished, ravaged the corn harvest is forcing families to survive on wild plants and roots. While in Namibia, 30,000 drought-related cattle deaths have been recorded since April, and some 200 elephants have starved to death in national parks along the Zambezi River. Since December, the volume of water pouring from the Zambezi over the massive Victoria Falls at the border where Zimbabwe meets Zambia has fallen more than 50% to its lowest level in 25 years, alarming government officials who have suggested that models predict that the falls could one day run dry. The pictures of the Victoria Falls are a stark reminder of what climate change is doing to our environment and our livelihood. Zambian President Edgar Lungu said this month, "No doubt that developing countries like Zambia are the most impacted by climate change and the least able to afford its consequences." He has outlined steps his government is taking in an effort to head off the crisis. Zambia, he said, is promoting agricultural practices, including the pursuit of drought-resistant food crops, construction of more resilient roads and water harvesting facilities, and strengthening the regulation of groundwater resources. One of the key drivers changing southern Africa's climate is accelerating deforestation, as growing populations are cutting into forests to sell timber to Asian and Western markets. The forests act like giant sponges to absorb carbon dioxide, the heat-trapping gas that contributes to global warming. We're getting a little bit of a windstorm here, and things are getting knocked over. Hotter and drier summers have accompanied the loss of forest cover, with temperatures expected to rise at twice the global average in the region across Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Namibia, and Mozambique. This year, southern Africa has seen its lowest rainfall since it was first recorded in 1981, according to the Botswana-based intergovernmental organization Southern African Development Community. This week, South Africa's Weather Service issued a flood warning for multiple provinces following unusually heavy rains, although abnormally hot weather continues in some parts of the country. So we're continuing to, as the last article pointed out, as well as this one, this is a very sad picture of elephants are starving to death in national parks. And yeah, not just humans, but animals being affected by all of this. The combination of drought and flooding making it very difficult to have regular growing seasons and making it very difficult for people to have access to the water that they need. Lastly, in this video, I'm going to read, we have a new Way Past What the Fuck from Michael Campy from December 11th, titled How Much, How Long, How Bad. There is a grand deception out there masquerading as a solution. It assumes that what is facing us is a problem, Michael Greer said. A problem is something that has a solution that can be implemented and then gotten past. A predicament is something that you have to deal with but cannot solve in the sense that you can implement something that will make it go away. Guy McPherson has made the same point. The Green New Deal will not solve the predicament that we are in. It will actually make things much worse. Jason Hickel, in this article, The Limits of Clean Energy, stated, in 2017, the World Bank released a little-noticed report that offered the first comprehensive look at this question. It models the increase in material extraction that would be required to build enough solar and wind utilities to produce an annual output of about 7 terawatts of electricity by 2050. That's enough to power roughly half of the global economy. By doubling the World Bank figures, we can estimate that it will take to get what it will take to get all the way to zero emissions, and the results are staggering. 34 million metric tons of copper, 40 million tons of lead, 50 million tons of zinc, 162 million tons of aluminum, and no less than 4.8 billion tons of iron. Do I see lithium in this? I just saw an article about Mexico discovering a new lithium reserve. So expect Mexico to get some freedom real soon. Or freedom from their leftist president, There's going to be a sudden coup, a sudden outcry from the population. We can't stand this socialism anymore. We won't take it. He's just a brutal dictator. He's helping the people, and we can't have that. In some cases, the transition to renewables will require a massive increase over existing levels of extraction. For neodymium, an essential element in wind turbines, extraction will need to rise by nearly 35% over current levels. Higher-end estimates reported by the World Bank suggest it could double. The same is true of silver, which is critical to solar panels. Silver extraction will go up 38% and perhaps as much as 105%. Demand for indium, also essential to solar technology, will more than triple and could end up skyrocketing by 920%. And then there are all the batteries we're going to need for power storage to keep energy flowing when the sun isn't shining and the wind isn't blowing. Will require enormous batteries at the grid level. Here we go about lithium. That means 40 million tons of lithium, an eye-watering 2,700% increase over current levels of extraction. Yeah. I mean, that's just 2,700%. What is that? 27,000 times? Is that if my math is correct? That's just for electricity. The increase in mining activities alone would destroy the planet. It seems to me that someone somewhere must be aware of this, that somehow a little bit of this information leaked into the psyche of the people pushing for the Green New Deal, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe the folks who are trying to get everyone on board with the scheme are well-meaning but deluded puppets. I don't have a top-level security clearance or access to classified information or any deep-throat type of informants at my beck and call, but I have this information. It seems unlikely that people in Congress or people running for president would not have the same access that I do. So what the fuck? Why aren't we being told the truth? Do I even have to ask that? We are not being told the truth because the truth is hella scary. Ah, see, you're picking up the Northern California lingo there, Michael. The truth, should it get out, would wreak havoc. As Augustine of Hippo said, the truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself. I think I've used this quote before, but I like it, so I am using it again. I haven't read it in one of your articles, or in one of these articles, but I really like that quote myself. I do not think that this lion will be let out of the cage anytime soon. The truth about our predicament is locked up tight, and not only by the folks who stand to lose a great deal if it gets out, but also by your friends and neighbors and wives and husbands and boyfriends and girlfriends and everyone else you know who cannot deal with the horrible reality of the position we find ourselves in. Again, they don't want to scare the children, and by children, they mean adults. In the end, you are either going to believe we are in big fat trouble or not. And if not, well, you were warned as to how much, a lot. How long, not long now. How bad, really, really bad. Thank you, Michael Campy, for that fine article. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.